Okay, everyone, welcome to our first exercise. And what we're going to do is actually do our first tutorial in Construct 2. So when you get to the website, go ahead and click on Tutorials, and you're going to get to where the top tutorials. And we're just going to go over this first one right here, Beginner's Guide to Construct 2. So if you feel like you're getting lost, or there's a part that I go over and you want to actually read more detail about it, this is the guide that we're going to go over. All right. So what I already did ahead of time was download these items from the actual tutorial. So go ahead and just download them. They're located on the first screen, I believe. So once you go into here, you'll see the background, and then you should actually you see the rest on page 2, which is right here. Just go ahead and right click, save image, and you'll get to import those as we go through this tutorial. Alright, so now the next thing we need to do is actually open up Construct 2. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And now that it's open, we're going to click on New Project. And it gives you a huge list of different types of templates you want to go with. Right now, we're just going to do our first one, New Empty Project. So we're going to click on Open. And then you get this that opens up. And I'm going to zoom out a little bit. That way you can see everything. And just a quick review from class is that on the left side you get the properties window that pops up. Right here you can name your project, put a description, your ID, we'll go over that later on, author, email, if you have a website. That way it just helps build some of this stuff out for you when you're publishing your game. And then the middle part is where your layout, event sheets, and everything, all your interactions happen. And on this right side, you start with your layer, but if you click on projects down here, you see everything that's in your project folder. And as you start adding objects, you'll start seeing it show up here. Alright, so first things first, what we're going to do is double click in the middle of your layout, and insert new object pops up. So the first thing we're going to do is put our background in. So out of all these items, we're going to just go to tiled background, click on that, click insert, and it gives you this crosshair. So go ahead and just click on that, and you get this where you could edit your image. We're just going to say let's open this up, and then I'm going to go to where my background is, and it gets popped in there. Alright, that's all I'm really going to do with that right now. Now that you have this here, there's a couple ways to do this. If you want to move this to the top left corner, you can go to this left side right here where it says position. If you did 0, 0, it'll actually set it up all the way. Now if you wanted to do it the full size without stretching it out, this one's 1708 by 960. So if I actually went in here and did 1708 by 960, it would do the whole size. Okay? Either that, or you could actually just do this. Either way works. Okay? So now that we've done our background, before I just double clicked in the middle, and if I do that now, I open the actual background. Well, I don't want that to happen every time. So what we're going to do is go to the right here where it says layers in the projects folder, and you're going to click layers, and right here, let's go ahead and click on layer 0, rename it to BG for background, and then lock it. And then we'll add one more layer, and we could call this let's call this main for right now. Okay, so now when you click here, this pops up because we've locked the background, so we can't accidentally move it while we're making our game. Okay, so now once we do that, we could actually start inputting all our other items. So that's what we're going to do now. So let's go ahead and just double click. We're gonna, everything else is a sprite. So we could just do sprite, insert, and click here. You get this box again. We're gonna do load in image from a file. And this time we're gonna grab player. And it's my little dude. So he's there now. Right there. Okay. So let's go ahead and do that for our enemy as well, which is monster. This guy right here. Perfect, we got one there. And then outside of this layout, outside here where my mouse is, double click, and I'm just gonna put the next two items out there. One is a bullet, and then one is an explosion. Now we're keeping these off screen because we don't want them to just show up right now. So we're just gonna hit this, get our explosion. There we go. Now if you look right here to the right, you'll notice all these are just called sprite 2, 3, and 4. We're just gonna go ahead and actually name these to something a little bit more significant. So the player is called player, the monster is called monster, and then the bullet, let's just call that bullet, and then our explosion, explosion. Alright. Now that we have all our objects in here and we've named it, what we're going to do is click on our player, and on this left side we're going to actually add some behaviors to it. So we're going to click on behavior, and then this window pops up. Now right here is the add new behavior. So we're going to click on that, and you get all these new options to choose from what you want to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually create a movement, and we're going to click the 8 direction, so then moves an object up, down, left, right, and on diagonals. Okay, so we're just going to hit add, and then if we actually hit play right now, we should be able to move our guy. And it's like, woo! It's the camera is not really following it, so we'll work on that. So once we have that behavior set up, we're gonna go ahead and add our next one. So let's go ahead and add the behavior for our bullet, which is right here. So our bullet actually just creates, we need to create a movement for that bullet. So when I shoot it, it's gonna shoot straight. And the thing about movements here, they already have one that's bullet, which is moving at its current angle. Alright, so we're just gonna hit that. The next part we're gonna do for this is we're gonna add another one, and we're gonna destroy the object when it leaves this layout. Now the reason we do that is to make sure that we don't just have thousands of bullets still using up memory and on the game screen when you can't see them. So once it leaves your vicinity, the bullet, we destroy it. So we make sure we add the bullet and destroy outside. So now what we're gonna do is do the same thing for the monster. We're gonna create a behavior. We're gonna make sure we add the direction. Oh, whoops, sorry, not the direction. What we're gonna do is add the bullet right here, because our monster is just gonna go left, right. And then what we're gonna do is click on our explosion, and let's just go ahead and add another one called fade. And this one, it changes an object's opacity over time, and it's useful for making objects gradually disappear. So this is going to help us when we work on our explosion, where it just shows up and then it'll fade out real quick. So it's a good way to just animate that really fast. Now once you have that set up, what we're going to do is create a couple more monsters. And the cool thing about creating monsters on the fly, once you have one done, you could either drag one in over like this, or you could hold control and drag it over, and you'll make multiple instances of that variable. So it's pretty quick and easy to make a few monsters, right? So you got a couple monsters. Nothing really exciting is happening yet, but this is kind of the first part of how to lay out your initial level if you wanted to. So now what we need to do is add onto our screen our events for using the keyboard and mouse. So we're going to actually have the mouse trigger the shooting. So when you double click and insert a new object, you can see input. You can choose from gamepad, keyboard, mouse, and touch. Now for right now, we're just going to insert the keyboard, and then we're going to insert the mouse. And if you were going to port this over to like a mobile device, then I would go ahead and do touch. I'm going to not do that right now because this is going to be for the web right now, but that's where touch would come into play. So now that you have those pieces in, what we could do is we could, let's first hit play just to show you what we got going. We got this guy moving, and he still doesn't follow. So what we're going to do is we're going to make sure he starts following the screen, and we kind of center it out. So this is our first event we're going to work on. And our first event is up here in event sheet 1. And we're just going to double click, and we're going to do system. And then we're going to do every tick, which just means pretty much always it's going to run this. So we're going to hit done. Once you set up this event first section, the actual event, then you get to add the actual action. So what we're going to do is say, hey, we want our player to follow it around. So we're going to do player, and then we're going to set the angle, because we want to actually make it where the character actually points towards the mouse. So let's see, right here we're going to say set angle, and actually set angle towards position, and then we're going to hit next, and then right here we're just going to type in, and in gray right here you get to see the actual expressions you could use. So if I clicked on mouse, I could see what I can use for this stuff, right? And if I actually did it this way, it actually auto-populates mouse.x, or you could just type it if you wanted to, and it kind of does it right there as well. So we do this. So we're just saying pretty much every second I want my player to have its angle set by wherever my mouse is. So if I actually hit play, you're gonna see where, here, let me move my guy. It's just gonna follow my mouse. Alright, so now that we have our actual guy following our mouse, the next thing what we're gonna do is we're gonna shoot a bullet. So let's go ahead, and what we're gonna do is pretty much have this guy spawn a bullet from him. So when we're in the event sheet, we're gonna double click, we're gonna click mouse event, and we're gonna hit next, and we're gonna click on click, and then it'll actually ask you which click, left, right, middle, click, or double click. We're just gonna say single click. I'm gonna hit done, and then I'm gonna go back in here. We're gonna add an action. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna say our player is going to spawn, and that is actually on here in the miscellaneous section, spawn another object. Then it's going to ask you what object. You could look here to see what you have, and I'm just going to click on bullet, and it gives you all the options from here. And then you could, if you wanted to add more, but I'm gonna just click here, click bullet, hit OK, and we're gonna keep this on. It says layer 0, image point 0, and if you forget your layers, I'm gonna hit OK first. If you forget your layers, if you go here, see how BG is 0 and main is 1. So what we want to do is go back in here and change this to layer 1. And we'll leave image point 0 for now. And let's go back here, and when we hit play, and it's going through my forehead really. So the next piece we need to do is actually move that out of the forehead area and by the gun. So by doing that, you click on your guy, and if you left click, you see this where it says edit animations. So we're gonna get there, and another way to get there is if you double click, and let's see, right here where it says set origin and image points, we're gonna click on that, and right now there's one right here in the middle. So what we want to do is add another one, and it lets you move it around based on where your crosshair is, right? So I'm gonna put it right in front of the gun, and notice how the number is now 1. Okay, so that's important because when we go back to our event sheet, we're gonna double click this and change this to 1. And once we do that, we should be able to play it, and you see where it's shooting out of the gun. Okay, so remember that you have to add a different reference point on the object, and you can have it spawn from wherever it's going to come from. Okay, now that we have it shooting the bullet, there's one other behavior we need to add onto our player. When we actually click on our player, go ahead to your behaviors, and what we're going to do is, well, actually there's two we need to add. One, I gotta make sure my player doesn't leave the actual layout, okay, because then that would be kind of weird because you won't be able to see it. And then the next one we want to make sure is we do, it's called scroll to, and what that does is right here, it centers the view on this object or at the midpoint of multiple objects. So if we do this, when we hit play, now we have it where I'm kind of more towards the middle, and I can't leave this bounded area, because if I did leave, it would become white space, and that's not a good thing. Alright, now that we have the player shooting, we want to make sure we actually shoot a monster, and the monster actually gets destroyed. So on here, we're going to go ahead and click and add an event. And for this event, we're going to say, okay, my bullet. And in here, we're going to check for collisions. So we're just saying, if my bullet actually hits something, I want that monster to die, pretty much, explode, right? So we're going to click on collision with another object. We're going to hit next, and then we're going to have the object. So we're going to say monster, and we hit done. And then what we say is we add an action and say, okay, well, the monster pretty much gets destroyed. And that is actually an option right here, destroy. So we hit done, and it gets destroyed. But we also have this little explosion right here that we want to use. So let's go ahead and add this and say that, okay, we want the bullet that is actually hitting the monster to spawn an explosion. So we're using the spawn another object like we did with the player shooting the actual bullet. So we're going to click on that, hit next, and then we're going to click on explosion, and we're going to say layer 1 and hit done. But then once the explosion actually happens, we need to make sure we delete the bullet or destroy it, right? Or the bullet will still be there. So let's just go ahead and destroy it. That way everything is gone. So based on this, we should be able to actually shoot the monster and the explosion shows up. Alright. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, let's go back to projects. I'm going to click monster and I'm going to slow the speed down to a crawl, really. So, well, let's see if 100 is slow enough. Alright, that way I could catch up. Okay. Oh, okay. I'm going to just make it a little bit slower. That way then I can get it there. So we're going to just make it to 20, hit play, and we're going. And then when I shoot, oh my god. It's shooting, but I'm getting this black. That's not exactly what I needed. So what we need to do is actually on here, we click this object. We just need to get rid of this little black area. So the quickest way to do that in here is we're going to create an effect. And right here to the left, you see where it says effects. And it says blend mode is normal. If you click on that, we're going to pick the first option to additive. And once we do that, you'll kind of see it be like transparent light, right? And we hit play. And now, there we go. It actually kind of feels like an explosion. All right. So now that we have that, we actually have a pretty decent, I mean, you know, these guys aren't the best, but we got our guy shooting and destroying monsters. So now what we need to do is make it a little bit more interesting for the monster. So let's go back to our event sheet, and it's not the greatest AI, but we're gonna give it a little bit of something. So we're gonna create an object from our system, and in here what we're gonna say is when the game starts. So in construct, this is more of like when the layout is starting. So we're talking about layout 1. So on start of layout, right? And then we're going to tell it that we want it to have our monster, and we're going to give it an actual angle, and we're going to set it to random. Okay? So what we're going to do is right here, set angle toward position. Actually, sorry, set angle. Hit next. And then in here, we're just going to type in random, and then random should pop up right away. And then in parentheses, it pops up and says, a range of random numbers to generate from 0 to 1 less than this value. So we're just going to say 360 and close it and hit done. So we're pretty much saying right up here that we're going to have it set to random angles, and if we actually hit play, let's see what happens. Oh, they're actually coming towards me now. Yeah. So they're all getting set randomly. They're going all over the place. So at least it's giving it a little bit more excitement. Now that we have our monsters going in different directions, we wanted to make sure when it leaves this layout that it comes back. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna actually create a condition, and we're gonna double click monster, and we're gonna say, okay, if this monster ever leaves our layout, let's see, is outside the layout, then what we're going to do is adjust its angle and have it point towards the player. That way then it comes at the player if it ever leaves. And in order to do that, we could easily just set it up where we're going to set the angle towards and angle toward position. hit next, and then we're gonna just go, we could go up here, click on player and player X and player dot Y. There we go. Now if we actually went back in here, hit play, now in theory, if I kind of just stayed around here on the edge, they should pop up. I should probably speed them up, so let me do that real quick. Let's click on monster, get them to at least 100. And they'll be coming towards me. And then, okay, so you see this guy right here? Right here. Let's see, watch. Once he leaves, he should come back towards me. There he came back, right? So it's giving it a little bit of an AI. It's not the best in the world, but yeah, pretty much we're covering all our bases. That way we can at least kill all the monsters we create. Alright, so now that we have the monsters actually coming towards you and you're able to shoot it, what we're going to do is add actual variables and add a health. That way it takes more than one shot to kill our monsters. So what we're going to do is click on our monster right here in the project section. And right here to the left in the properties, we're going to go to instant variable and we're going to add one. So go ahead and just click and add. I'm going to call this health. It's going to be a number, and right now we're going to say 5. So that means that this has a 5 hit point type of thing. It could be 2, 3. If you want to make them different values, that's fine too. But that just kind of gives you an idea of like, okay, this is what we're going to use our actual health for. So now that we've added that, what we need to do is actually go ahead and change our event in here. Now, right now we have it set where, hey, if my bullet actually collides with the monster, we destroy the monster and we have our bullet stuff getting destroyed. So what we want to do is this line right here that's highlighted, we're actually going to replace it. So if you actually left click on it, you could see this where it says replace action, and that's what we're going to do. Alright, so what are we going to actually replace it with? We're going to say monster, and we want to just subtract one from its health. Okay, so there's an actual instance variable section here, right here, and we're going to say subtract from, and we're going to hit next, and it's going to say, okay, how much you want to subtract. We just want to subtract 1. Hit done. Now we have it in here where it says if the bullet collides with monster, we're going to subtract 1 health, and then the bullet gets destroyed. Okay? Now, if we play the game, nothing really exciting is going to change, except the monster will never die because we don't ever destroy it. So let's see. There we go. If I keep on shooting him like over and over again, it doesn't matter because nothing's going to happen and they'll kill me, right? So what we need to do is now check for the health and make sure that if it ever hits 0 or less than 0, then we destroy the monster. So that's what we need to do next. So let's double click and click on monster, and we're going to hit next. And what we're going to do is we're going to actually do a comparison of the variable. So we're going to go in here and go compare instant variable and hit next. So here it says health. It's the only variable we have, so it populates the first one. So if we had multiple, then you could pick which one. And we're going to say if health is less than or equal to 0, then we're going to destroy it. Now we say less than or equal to just in case you decide to add new weapons or things of that nature where it actually, you have a bazooka if you wanted to shoot something out, right? And if it goes past 0 and like real fast, then it'll get destroyed. So it's a good way to just make sure that, future proofing almost, right? So we're going to say less than or equal to 0. We're going to hit done. So now that we have our health equal to less than equal to 0, we're going to just add our next piece, which is to say that we have our monster and we're going to spawn another object, which is going to be our explosion. And it's layer 1 and hit done. So that way at least it's you see that, and then we're going to destroy our monster. So click on monster and we're going to go to destroy. So now if we actually go and play this game, oops. It destroys. There we go. All right, so we got it now to where, hey, I have to hit it at least 5 times, and then that way at least I got that going. So now what we're gonna do is add a score. So right here we're gonna just add our next variable. So we're gonna insert new object and we're gonna do text. Let's insert it, and I'm just gonna click right here, kind of just drag it here and do something like this. Okay, now in the properties section you have text right here. We'll make it visible. This is the font size, so say you want to make it a lot larger, you can. And then black's a horrible color for this, so we're just gonna do yellow, that way we could actually see it. And let's say we make the score really huge. Well, actually we should probably just keep it around 18 or so for now. So we'll do 18, and now we have the text box here. So now what we get to do is actually go into our events sheet section, and what we're going to do is add a global variable, and that global variable is going to be our score. And the reason we have to do it as global is there's multiple ways to, like, say if you got hit, you lost points. Say when you kill certain monsters, you get different points. So when you have a global variable, every object could actually access this variable throughout this whole game. So if I actually left click, you could hit add global variable, and once you do that, you get to set the name. So I'm going to call it score. It's a number, and you start with 0, and then it shows up here. Okay, so that actually just all global usually go to the top, and it just lets you know what's accessible, what's not. So now what we're gonna do is when we actually destroy a monster right here, we're gonna add 1 to our score. So when we actually go to the action, we're gonna say system, and we're just gonna say add 1 to score. So we need to go into here and let's see. Oh, right here, global and local variables, add to, hit next, score, and 1, hit done. It's gonna add 1 to score. Now that it's doing that, we should be able to click play, and hopefully everything works according to. Oh wait, where did my oh, so now that we have our text up, we need to actually make it work with the score. Right now I'm just destroying it, adding it to 1, but my text isn't really doing anything to it yet. So what we have to do is in the event sheet, we're going to say every tick, kind of like how we did the first one, we want it to just check the text. Okay, so we're going to click system, hit next, and every tick, hit done, and we're going to add, and we're going to say we're going to go to text, and we're going to set the text, And then we're gonna go ahead and let's see. Right here, set text, hit next, and then it gives you quotation marks. So we're gonna say score, and then we're gonna just use the and sign and type in the actual global variable, which is score. Okay, so once we hit done, we're gonna make it to whatever the score is. So now when you hit play, you should see where it says 0, but hold on 1 second. Alright, so to make sure that this actual text is showing up in the right section, right now we have it in main, but we want to make sure we add a new layer. So let's do HUD for heads up display, and we need to make sure this is actually on that layer. Now, if you put it in the wrong layer, you go to the properties, you could click right here where it says layer and switch it to the right one. And then when it's here, it'll actually show up in that spot. Now, what this lets you do is you get to set up the layer and keep it on screen. And since you're not moving that layer, right now all we're doing is moving the main one. So when right now, like you see it where it's still way up here. Now that we have our text box, what we want to do is make sure it shows up every time. So in the layers section, if you click the the layer you put it on, which is the HUD layer, in the properties section to the left, you see where it says parallax. What we're going to do is just say 0, 0, and once we do that, we're just telling it that it's not going to really move. So it's always going to be present there. So if I actually have a guy come, see how I destroyed it and I got one. And now I'll get another one and a couple more. So it kind of gives me, oh no! So it stays on the screen, allows you to see your score at all times, and just like any other HUD that you would have in a game, you want your status and everything to stay put. Okay? So now that we've done that, we pretty much have a really good game where you go over all the basics, and there's a couple more things we could do. And one is we could keep on spawning enemies. That way then they show up and keep on attacking, right? So in the event sheet, what we can do is say system, and then what we can say is give it a time. Like let's say, hey, every couple seconds this is gonna pop up. And here there's the time setting every X seconds, and you get to actually say how many. Let's say 3. Every 3 seconds I am going to create an object, and what that object is a monster. So we hit OK, and we change this to layer 1, and then here the X and Y, we can make it random. We could do whatever we want. And if we actually look at the size of the layout, you can kind of play with it and figure out what it is. I'm just gonna make this where it's like 1400, and then I'm gonna make the Y random. So random 1024. That way it's random and it comes at you. Now that we have that going, we should create a way where we die. So let's create our last piece, which is we're going to make our monster, and we're going to say, hey, when we actually collide with another object, if we ever collide with player, the player dies. Okay? So once we do that, we just go here, add an action, and go player and destroy. And we hit done. Now that we have that, if I play this game and move around, I could Just keep on getting these guys. And then if he gets me, I die. And that's the end of that. So hopefully you guys got to go through here and see how this exercise came all together. We did do a lot of steps in here, so take your time. If you are confused or want to read it, look at that beginning tutorial, and I'm going to go over some more of this stuff in our next class.